I'm so delighted to be joined today by Rachel Khoo, who is a multi-talented bon vivant, breathing fresh air, colourful flair, and the practice skills of a chef onto the world stage and into the kitchens and living rooms of home cooks internationally. So Rachel is so multi-skilled. She is a TV producer, a TV presenter, a podcast broadcaster, a food writer and best-selling cookbook author of 6 books, which have been translated into 14 languages, and a global culinary consultant. So you will have seen her recently as the sassy and feisty judge on the Great British Menu. Her new delicious book called Chocolate is out there, and her TV series Simple Pleasures. So welcome to Fasttrack to Fearless, Rachel Khoo.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I get tired just listening to that introduction. I was like, have I done that much? That's crazy.
You have. You have. You are so talented and so creative. We've known each other for some years now, and you have never failed to impress me with just your prolific creativity and your chutzpah and your you're just like a whirling creative Catherine wheel. So where does all that drive and creativity stem from?
Where does it all stem? I guess the need to communicate and the need to. So I went to art college, and at art college, the course I did a BA in art and design, specializing in media, so graphic design, photography. And you got a brief, and it was you had to kind of solve that brief using the medium you wanted to communicate your idea. So you know, there were fashion students, there were textile students, there were architect students. So everybody kind of got the same brief, but they chose their way, how they wanted to communicate that idea and that their way of solving that brief. So for me, it just happens to be that at the moment, food is the way I kind of creatively solve this communication, the ideas I want to communicate. Or it might be TV, or like, so that is my kind of drive. I just like to communicate, and I like to creatively solve problems. I think that if there's a problem, there's always a solution. Everything I see, you know, I started my career, most people know my career from that tiny kitchen in Paris. A lot of people would say, I can't cook in a tiny kitchen with 2 gas rings and a toy oven. And I was like, well, I can, and I have a tiny kitchen, but I can make it into a thing. I can turn it into like, well, actually, this is a big selling point because I can only fit 2 for lunch. So it's the tiniest restaurant in Paris. So I always think there might be a problem, but there's always a solution, you know, and it's just a way of approaching it. And I think I really enjoy that, like, that kind of looking, that researching, finding that, you know, solution, working with people to create that project. So that's what really drives me, is just like trying to solve whatever problem there might be out there.
That is so interesting. I've never thought of Little Paris Kitchen, that's the sort of series that you sort of shot to fame with, as being as having been born from you solving a problem. So you were in this tiny little flat. I've seen it. I saw it myself. I was lucky to see it. I mean, it literally, you can, you know, if you put out your 2 arms, you can touch either side. But so that's so interesting that you saw that as a lot of people saying, oh, no, you can't possibly run a restaurant or a pop-up from this tiny place. And you saw, well, you flipped it and said, well, actually, it's going to be the tiniest kitchen in Paris. Very clever.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, so at the time, that was the 3rd cookbook I was writing, and I knew from writing recipes and developing them, you have a lot of food waste, you know, have a lot of ingredients and cooking you need to do. And so I thought, well, look, I can do a pop-up in my apartment. I couldn't afford to kind of hire an expensive professional kitchen. I was like, well, I invite people for lunch. They'll pay for the ingredients because I just asked them to cover the costs. I don't waste the food. I get some feedback. I meet some people. It's only 2 people. That's the amount of people I could fit in. So I was just like, right, this is what I have. This is what I can do with those resources. It's similar to like last year with the pandemic hitting. I was a week away from filming the chocolate series, which has just gone out. that, you know, we were already in pre-production, and that just stopped. So a week away from like going into filming, I was like, right, I have no idea whether we're going to film again, what's going to happen. And so I just emailed the commissioning director saying, look, I'm in Sweden. I've got these possibilities. What are your restrictions? What could we do? And that's how we brainstormed Rachel Khoo's Simple Pleasures. I was like, okay, I can cook it in the countryside because it was low risk. We got like a cameraman who was like from in the same county, you know, it was in the countryside, in the middle of nowhere. It was just me and a cameraman and 2 local cooks kind of helping me out, kind of prepping stuff. And that was how Rachel Khoo's Simple Pleasures came about, was because, right, I've got this, we can make something, it's just going to be different. And that's how the show came about. So I'm always about, okay, if there are restrictions or if there are challenges and stuff like that, there is a way around it. It's just about finding that creative solution. And that's what I thrive on. It's like, okay, there's a challenge. I'm up for that.
Yeah, I mean, you're like the personification of that saying, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade.
Yeah, I think so. But I think it comes from my mum, and certainly from my grandma in Austria. So my granddad died when my mum was very young. My grandma had to raise like 6 kids on her own. And my mum they were very poor. She would tell me about how resourceful and how, not savvy, but like just really clever you had to be like not wasting anything. And I think that has been instilled in me, like being resourceful. And even if you have less, you can still be creative. Don't let not having you like believing, oh, I need to have this and this and this to be able to succeed. That's not true. You already have the tools in your hand. You have everything. You have yourself. And it's what you do with what you have that is going to lead you to your success. I don't believe that like you need certain things to, I mean, obviously it helps, you know, budget helps and stuff like that, but there's always a way, you know, like I really believe that. So for me, it's just about like being creative. And sometimes I actually find the more restrictions you have, the more creative you can become.
Amazing. And does that play out in other ways other than sort of food and art then, you know, like you know, how would that philosophy apply to your career, for example?
So I mean, everybody thinks like, oh, you're in TV, people just like throw projects at you. Yeah, sometimes that happens, but most of the time I am out pitching, and a lot of the time I pitch, door doesn't open, stays closed, or it opens a little bit and they're like, no, and then you're like, so you just have to constantly put out ideas. So you always like, and often it is a work in progress. So for instance, I work a lot with the national Japanese channel, because my TV shows are aired there and my cookbooks are translated in Japan, and I usually go to Japan every year to do like a cooking special over in Japan. And this year or last year I couldn't. So I pitched to them to do a special from Stockholm, and I had to set up my own production company to make this happen. I was dealing with like COVID protocols, insurance, getting the crew together. I mean, it was a lot of work, but a great learning experience. We had the director, the whole kind of director, series producer Skyping in from Tokyo with a translator. Like it was nuts, all from my little kitchen. Yeah, well, not little, it's a bit bigger. But it's like, I just feel like seizing the opportunities. And it never hurts to send an email. It never hurts to reach out. And nowadays, it is so easy to reach out to people. Like I use LinkedIn. You can like I sometimes guess the email addresses. I've done that a lot. You know, I just like, and I pick up the phone. People always are like a bit strange when you pick up the phone. Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm like, we just emailed. I saw your phone number. Do you mind? Like, blah, blah, blah. But I sometimes think that the actually picking up the phone will get you you're there quicker with less kind of bouncing back emails. It's a sales game. I mean, I've listened to a lot of sales kind of podcasts, and it's like the more you like pitch, the more likely you're going to get something out. And it also keeps you nimble. You know, you've got to keep on pushing yourself. Obviously, you have downtimes. Like, I am not like this machine where I'm like, oh, I've got to like doof, 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 doof. No, it's not like that. It's not like that. But they're like, you kind of go through ups and downs, you know? And I had a very intense year last year. And like, so the first 3 months this year, I've been doing some online courses. I've been reading a lot. So you have to also nourish yourself. So remember that, you know, if you're putting a lot out, also nourish yourself with different types of mediums, not just, I mean, social media is great, but I think like books, online courses, going, I mean, obviously now it's not so possible, but you like going out, actually going for a walk is amazing. Like, when, and there are a lot of studies that walking or being in motion can help with the idea process. So if you're thinking about new ideas, and sometimes you just have to let it simmer. It's like a good stew. When you let it simmer for a little longer, you develop those flavors, the ideas start going, and then things like start moving, and you just have to give it some time.
Amazing, Rachel. I just want that. There's so much in that now, but so I just want to take us slightly back to like you just calling people, you emailing people, etc., etc. A lot of the people that I coach suffer or mentor suffer from imposter syndrome. They're like, you know, like, well, no, I'm not doing that. I can't do that. I'll look like an idiot. So do you ever suffer from anything like that? And if so, what do you do?
Of course. But I think like email, like just like I've got nothing to lose. And I always think, do you think that person is going to go home to their partner and say, yeah, this woman emailed me about this idea and like going to talk? No, they're probably like, if they don't answer, it's probably because they're super busy and they've got too much on their hands or whatever. Like, I honestly think you have got nothing to lose because that person is not going to go like announce it on social media. This woman sent me an like, it just, I think it's a lot of it is in your head. It's like, it's really just like, send it out there and don't worry about it. Or you have nothing to lose apart from whatever time it took you to write that email.
Yeah. And what about, because you obviously seem like a very confident, extrovert, articulate woman. So what happens if you're the shy, retiring type? Does that count you out?
But you have to find your way a little bit. Don't, like, I always think, so I struggle in social situations sometimes, like, you know, I'm very good with the work mode, but like with new groups and stuff like that, I kind of an extrovert, introvert. And, you know, sometimes when I've done TV jobs, I actually struggle with finding my place and my voice, and it takes time. So I really think is finding out who you are and doing it your way. So just because somebody does it their way doesn't mean that is how you have to do it. And if you find it easier, okay, instead of sending a long email, just send a 2-liner, or like, I don't know, or like if it's not a phone call, maybe it's on another platform, you know, just find your way. But there's always a way, like, And I do believe you have to sometimes put yourself out of your comfort zone. You have to do that, because this is what sets people apart from the people who say, oh, if I had that great idea, and the people who actually take that risk. And a lot of it, I mean, it's been talked about more about like failure. And actually, I see failure now as, it's not a failure. It's actually just something you're learning from. It can be it's a positive thing. So it might not have worked out the way you wanted it to work. So what can you learn from that? And then take that experience and apply it to your next project. I had this lifestyle platform where I had 5 or 6 people working for me, a creative studio in London. And I ran it for a good couple of years. I was in Stockholm, so it was kind of doing the back and forth. I just had a baby, and it didn't work. I couldn't make it work. And so a lot of people would say that from a business point of view, that's a failure. And I'm like, okay, it didn't work out the way I wanted to, but I learned a huge amount about sales, pitching, managing people. I managed to put a creative space together in London, which I sold last year. I learned so much from that. Then actually, I think, okay, it didn't work out. And now not having this project is actually turned into a positive thing, because I'm actually doing other projects, which I find a lot more stimulating and really pushing me creatively, because I ended up doing a lot of managing people, which I really hate. I realize I really hate managing people. So
yes.
So I think, it's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with not achieving when you set out to do a project and it not going the way you initially intended it to. That's okay. It's just how you reap the benefits from it. So I think people should stop fearing failure, or rebrand failure. It's not failure. It's just you're learning,
Yeah. It's just like part of life's rich tapestry. It's the journey.
Yeah.
It's very, very wise and very, very well. It's very useful that it's just, failure is just there's no such thing as failure. It's just different learnings. But what about you talked about pitching a lot, and sometimes the door doesn't open. I mean, obviously the door has opened. You're very successful, etc. Which brings me to the point of resilience. So what are your tips on coping with rejection or knockbacks or downtimes?
I think so. I really struggle still from when people I get so much love on Instagram, but Twitter people a bit harder. So I'm really bad on Twitter. That's why you don't really see me on Twitter, because I can't handle when somebody says something like, "Oh, she's such a," I find it really hard. So firstly, try and take yourself out of that situation if you're in the social realm. Don't go there. Don't put yourself in that situation where you could have people saying those things to you. But also, I really think is embracing that is part of pitching. You're not going to get the answer you want, not all the time, but you will know. You will have at one point somebody say, actually, you know what, there's something I like in that. Or when you do pitch, it's keeping it open. Say, look, this is a starting point. I really want to develop a communication. Can we start here? I want to get some feedback. And actually, when they say, I remember doing a project for a brand with Collect, and the campaign didn't go as planned. It didn't have the results. And so I emailed the guy and said, look, what were you not happy with? And he said some really he listed it, and that was hard to take. But at the same time, I was I looked back and he had some really valid points, and those valid points were great for the next campaign I did. So if somebody says no, it's always worth going back and asking, oh, could you tell me why you're saying no? It would really be helpful. I know you're super busy, but just 2 or 3 points, because I really want to develop my work and pitch better. So if you develop a relationship with that person you intend to work with a lot, that can help. But I think it's just be aware that's going to happen.
I think that's such a brave thing to do. It's almost say rip the Band-Aid off and just show me what went wrong. And that is difficult to hear, isn't it? And but you're right. If you can think about it objectively, once the emotion has passed, then you get to understand what it's like from a different perspective, and can consider whether you want to listen to that advice or not. It's very
Yeah,
wise.
yeah. Because obviously sometimes some advice is not valuable. You have to make that decision. You have to have that critical judgment. Is this advice from this person valuable or not? I know most of the advice I get on Twitter is not valuable to me. It's not valuable. So I know I'm going to remove myself. But I know if I work with the Japanese TV channel and I'm like, please, can you give me some feedback on why this idea doesn't work? That is valuable to me because I want to work with them, and and they have value in that. I also, I've lost my thread, but there was something else I would like. I guess it's just. It's that losing that fear, isn't it? It's losing that fear. It's like, and also as artists, I know there are a lot of creative people out there. You are so like emotionally involved with your project. It's like your baby, it's like, don't hurt my baby. So you're really protective, but you have to get into this frame of mind. This is business. For these people, you are pitching to a TV channel, you're pitching to a publisher, whatever platform you're pitching to. They just want to see if it's going to make hard cash.
Yes.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
And you have to think like, will this project make hard cash? Because nobody's out just to do a charity project nowadays. And I know it's even harder now. So you have to it's almost like doing a business study. You have to prove to them this is commercially viable. And that's what.
And how much do you that's such a good point. I mean, it's like there is the distinction between who we are and the things that we do, and seeing them almost as products, isn't it? Like, well, do you like that brand of cereal or not? Do you like that flavor? Okay, that wasn't so successful. Now, it doesn't mean that me myself is like, a dreadful person just because I put out a duff product once in a while. But how much do you see yourself as an artist or as an entrepreneur? Like, what's the kind of balance there?
I definitely see myself more as an entrepreneur. It's like it comes back to like solving problems, creatively solving a problem. So for me, it's always like finding a way of communicating and solving that problem, and it's kind of more entrepreneurial than an artist. I guess where the artist part comes into play is that I'm really bad at accounting. So I would advise everybody to get a very good accountant when you can afford one, because that will save you a lot of headache and a lot of mistakes. But I think I'm more entrepreneurial, also because I get really bored very quickly. So I like jumping in, like really intense, like getting into a project. I do it. It's like I do a TV project, 6 months, and then I'm out. Or like a book project. It's like a year and a half of intense work. Usually with book projects, I've got like 10 book ideas on my laptop, but these are book ideas which I've had going for like 5 or 6 years, and it might be I might never use them. I might use them in like 10 years. I might it might take a while. So the Swedish kitchen idea, which I did in 2015, no, 16. I can't even remember. Anyway, it was a while ago. I had that idea back in 2012. I already wrote like a pitch for that in 2012. And nobody took that pitch in 2012. They said, no, don't want it. But then I rehashed it, I rebranded it, and it came back. So that's also a little tip. Just because sometimes it's about timing, so your ideas right now might not work for the timing right now, but don't say, I'm going to stick it in the bin. You never know. You might be able to use some of that idea, rehash it, rebrand it, kind of make it and pitch it again in a year's time, in half a year's time, because you don't know what the situation in the world is going to be like. So I always think an idea is never wasted, even if it doesn't get commissioned.
Well, that goes back to your grandmother's being very resourceful and not wasting any food, and kind of literally rehashing it and making something for supper out of it, or making something later. Yeah. And what's your attitude to, I think nowadays, it's so important. It's becoming very, very obvious that liberation comes from economic freedom, and for women it's very important to, make your own money and all that kind of thing. What's your attitude to money? Because I know
Yeah.
you're very you're problem solving and you're entrepreneurial, but how much does kind of making money come into that?
I mean, I've had this motto for quite a long time now: work less, earn more. Not doing very well with it, but I have that in mind. And I think, firstly, you need to value your work. So that is really important with the way you pitch your work, the way you price your work, the way if somebody, actually, there's some really good social media stuff out there when somebody says, oh, look, I'm paying in exposure kind of like thing. Value your work. Exposure is great, but you've got to like pros and cons. And there are a few things you can reply like, oh, thank you very much for thinking of me, blah, blah. Do get in touch when you have a budget, da, 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 kind of thing. So I think really value your work, and also the way you speak about your work. What was it? A couple of weeks ago, I met up with a PR, and she wanted to invite me on a press trip. And she said, well, look, how does it work with payment and stuff like that? And I said, you know what? I need a fee because I have to, I have costs. And then I realized I should have stopped that. I need a fee, full stop. I was kind of having to justify why I need a fee. And even now, I struggle sometimes. And that's why I have a TV agent and a literary agent. But I think mentally getting to that point, the language you use, that you actually value your work, will help you with the pitch. And then I always say, be the first one to put in, when they're like, you're not sure, you ask how much they've got, or should you say your fee? It's a bit like dating, who should go first? I always say, go in high, because then they can negotiate you down. So add another 30, 40%. You've got nothing to lose if you go in higher. They're always going to knock you down.
Yes.
I mean, negotiating is hard, but when you, I think, work on your confidence and valuing your work, then it will be easier to negotiate, because you can say, and people admire that. People they really, they're like, right, she values her work, and they're not paying for your time, they're paying for your expertise and your,
Yes.
That's why I'm hourly rates should be hourly rate. It should be on your what you learn, the expertise.
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah, so there's some interesting, because I've been doing a few courses about that at the moment, to kind of try and build my confidence with negotiating and valuing my work. But yeah, I think it's the language. Start with the language and how you feel, so you can project that when you go and pitch and you negotiate.
Yes. In terms of when you need a bit of oomph or inspiration, or in those low moments, do you have any kind of inner champions or people that that inspire you, that keep you going? What do you kind of use as a pep talk to yourself?
So it's the first time in 10 years, I've been working for myself, actually more than a decade now, but it's the first time in a decade I've actually really spent time to go on courses which aren't food related, and to invest in myself, to take time to learn. And I would highly recommend that. It's if you are constantly putting stuff out, you can't put stuff out if you're empty. So if you're putting a lot of stuff out, you actually need to fill yourself up even more. It's a bit like you got to think you're an athlete. And I did this creative pirate course recently with this eating designer from Holland, called Maria Vogelsang, and I've admired her for 20 years. I mean, when I was in my mid-20s, I sent her a letter saying, can I come work for her? But it didn't happen. I ended up doing the Little Paris Kitchen. So I've ended up doing online courses with her, and she had a really good analogy of or way of thinking about your work day. So you're a marathon runner, and you have to break down your day. You can write it down, everything you're doing, and kind of look at each thing you're doing. Is it energy giving, or is it taking energy away? like looking at the things, what gives you energy, and trying to up those things in your daily life, because the hours equates days, the days equates weeks, so like you have to do that on a daily basis. So for me, one of the things which I realized, and I used to be like in my mid-20s, I was like, you've got to be kidding me, you really like into exercise? And it's just 25 minutes. Like I do like these online classes, like I don't know, from this morning I did bar, like sometimes I do HIIT. I'm really bad, I'm not very good, I'm not very, like, it's the same with running. But I realized that I kind of analyzed my day, but the days I did start my day with 25 minutes exercise, I just had a more productive day. So that's a kind of good, very simple exercise to do. Like, write down what are you doing on your days, and what day is a good day and what day is a bad day. And so the good days, how can you kind of replicate that,
Yes.
in small ways? So that's something like, so you want to up your energy giving things. And energy giving can be going to meet your friend with coffee, or going for a walk, or reading for 10 minutes, like a book you're really enjoying. And actually, by doing those energy giving things, you end up being more productive on your work projects.
Yes.
Because you have spent time to nourish yourself, to kind of give you that energy. Yeah. And so even if you think, oh, like doing 25 minutes exercise, or like going for a walk, it's like time away from me doing the work, actually it's going to help you do the work.
Yes.
Or like just having that cup of tea, instead of like rewarding yourself with a cup of tea, go make yourself a cup of tea, then crack on with the work.
Yeah, such good advice. It's sort of like it's like, I think there's another version of that, the radiators and the drains. But I think that normally refers to people. Are they a radiator? Do they make you feel good, or do they suck you dry? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, and what would you say? One of the things, I think we touched on it slightly, but because you talked about Twitter, but a lot of people compare themselves to others, or worry about what people think of them. So how does that play out for you? And by the way, Twitter, I think nobody ever goes on Twitter to say something nice. So I sort of agree with it. They don't. If you look at it, it's always people sort of like saying negative things. So, what's your advice on dealing with other people's perceptions? Or what do you do about it?
So firstly, think, is that person of value to me? Do they have a valid point? Like, I mean, if it's just some random person on social media, you don't know what's going on in their life. Like, who knows what's going on? So firstly, anything on social media in general, like if you don't know them personally, if they don't have a kind of connection to you, then forget it. Like, what, and also, I've started to have this mentality. So when I started my career, I was very much, I wanted to be, everybody should like me. Everybody should be my best friend. I really want to please everyone. And now I'm like, I'm here to do business. We can be professional, but you don't need to be my best friend. We don't need to end up at the pub at the end of the day. We're all working together on this project. We need to do a good job. And I will be polite. I will be, professional. I am not rude, but it's not about making friends.
So, Rachel, final question. How do you measure success? Actually, it's two questions. How do you measure success, and what would your motto to live by be?
So success, I think it changes at different times in your life. Right now, success for me is when I'm financially, I have financial freedom, but I can go pick up my kids from the nursery. I can drop them off, or if they're ill, I really want to have more family time. So that's why all my pictures at the moment are less travel related and more things I can do from Sweden. So success for me at the moment is having, enough financial income, but still be able to have quality time with the family. So that's my definition of success at the moment.
And finally, Rachel, what's your motto to live by, or your golden rules?
My golden rules. Oh my goodness, I don't. Well, I'd like to say I like work efficiently. I think there's a lot into being working efficiently. That's why I say if you pitch an idea now and it doesn't work now, keep it on the side. You might be able to rehash it and do it again. So be resourceful, be efficient, be resourceful, and then enjoy it. Enjoy it because like when you're in the hard graft, it's easy to forget like you always like, oh, I'll be fine when I reach this goal, da, 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 but actually enjoy the process. So often when I'm filming, I'm like, oh, we've got a really long day filming. Oh, and I'm now trying to be more present and actually just, oh, it's fantastic. We're filming kind of like this, oh, I'm working on a recipe and not kind of like, oh, I'll be fine once I hand in this and stuff like that. So try and enjoy the process because that is what you're doing,
Yeah.
that is what's taking up your time. And if you don't enjoy it, then maybe you need to be doing something else.
Yeah. Lovely. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Rachel. So you are a fount of wisdom and very, very entertaining as well. What a dream. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you for all your tips on how to get on the fast track to fearless.
Thank you so much for having me.